It started as a prank, albeit a dark prank, but a harmless prank nonetheless. My town has been ravaged by rumours since I was a kid. A ghost story of the Sonny family cult that used to stalk the streets and mercilessly kill on a regular basis. If you look up old news articles, you can find sensationalized headlines about stabbings and murders that alluded to them. But that's all they were: murders. The idea of a cult secretly pulling the strings was absurd to me, so I decided to make fun of it. Part of me justified my idea by thinking that I'll take the sting out of the looming subject by showing how ridiculous the idea of a cult really was, and showing how easily people will believe such a crazy conspiracy. First, I did some research on well-known cults, and let me tell you, cults get up to some weird stuff. Without getting into the gory details, I can sum up one particularly nasty example with Kool-Aid. Needless to say, I didn't want to go that dark. I started by grabbing some red spray paint cans and hitting the streets. I designed a cryptic looking logo which would be the symbol of this mysterious cult. It only took a few hours, but I left several tags throughout the town in relatively innocuous locations. The symbol itself was relatively simple and was easy to replicate. It was a circle with a dot in the inside and a line from the bottom of the circle going straight down. To me, it looked vaguely like an eye with a gory muscle hanging down. A perfectly cryptic but recognizable logo. Then I went to my local printers and had a few hundred leaflets printed advertising this organization, with heavy implications that it was a cult. On the header was a more polished graphic of the logo I made on Photoshop. I never handed these out in person. I'd be stupid to be associated with these since I figured more likely than not people were going to freak out at the start. I left them on random street corners held down with stones, or I left them haphazardly taped on the walls of random alleys. At first, I never really heard anything about it. I even tried slyly bringing it up in conversation, acting shocked, asking co-workers if they'd seen these random pieces of graffiti, or asking if they'd seen the leaflets. Everyone said they didn't know anything, which was a bummer. I started to believe that maybe this was harder than I thought, and that maybe I was just wasting my time. But then, everything changed. I almost missed it at first. I was walking past an electrical store, which had various TVs on sale advertised by silently playing the news. Next to the news anchor, who looked rather concerned, was a picture of one of the pieces of graffiti I'd left. This was it. It was getting full media coverage, and suddenly, it was on the tip of everyone's tongues. From this point on, people wouldn't shut up about it. The managers at work had to keep breaking people up to stop tardiness on the shop floor. Customers who came in were more solemn than usual, carrying a mood of uneasiness in the air. People were already making associations with the Sonny family cult and the various disappearances and deaths from the past, just like I wanted, even before the news officially talked about it as a possible theory. What I set out to do had worked. I figured anyone in this town would believe something was a cult, no matter how vague, and it was true. The only problem was, how do I finish this? I actually hadn't thought that far, thinking at most it'd just scare the kids who were making up these rumours and I could rub it in their faces. It had been so long since the disappearances that I figured it would be easy to come out and show that the cult theories were just people's paranoid minds running wild. But what happened instead was the fear that people held back then resurfaced, and it became too sensitive a subject to pull the "it's just a prank" card. I was in too deep, but I wanted to set things right. At first, I figured I'd come clean at the cult event. The leaflet I sent out advertised, in a cryptic way, that everyone should meet at the local park grounds on the 6th of June to hear about the good word. This would bring in the people who are either most afraid, trying to figure out what's going on, or there would be the fanatics that I set out to show were being too believing in wild speculations. The day couldn't come any faster, and I couldn't wait to get this over with. I hid far away at first, scoping out who would show up. At first, some people arrived early and simply waited in the open, making casual conversation with each other. The closer the time came, the more people arrived. Way more than I'd anticipated. Suddenly, I had a surging fear in my throat, and I just froze, terrified to confront this now large gathering as I watched an absurd amount of people congregate, all fueled purely by curiosity and fear. The time of the meeting came and went, the casual mutters of conversation slowly turning to confused whispers. I was stuck, staring, when suddenly I was jarred from this trance. My heart racing, I turned to see who it was, and it was just a girl, probably still in high school. Her face was obscured in the night by her dark hair. She said she saw me staring and wondered what I was up to. I simply replied that I was nervous and a bit scared. She cocked her head as she eyed my face, nodded, and walked away. Confused, I turned back and saw another group approaching the crowd, along with a lot of flashing lights. It turned out the police were waiting in hiding for the perpetrator of the notes to come out so they can formally arrest them and question them. However, as the time ran on, they decided that the suspect was a no-show and came out to move the crowd along. I slipped away with the hurried movings. Shaking, I made my way home. When I got home, my heart sank. On my door was a note. A simple A4 piece of paper with a strange shape brushed on in red. It sat like a Christian cross, but with the left and right ends bending up. Between the middle line and the bent up ends were two small dots. The note smelled like blood. It didn't take long for the police to arrive. I could tell they were being especially alert with a current air of uneasiness through the town. I handed them the note and explained how I found it. At first, they thanked me for the tip and that they were still looking into the current situation. This is when I froze. I knew from the bottom of my heart that the note I handed them was a real lead. However, I also knew the current investigation into my prank would be a waste of time. I thought long and hard, and much to their confused staring while I mulled things over, I decided to come clean. I told them everything. At first, they just stared at me, trying to take in the insane ramblings I sent their way. How the recent scare, which had set the mood of the town to a point that can only be compared to 2001, the event which caused most of this town's terrified souls to congregate to possibly hear of their end, was just a prank. They did not take it well. On top of the threat of wanting to arrest me on a number of felonies, ranging from the definitely provable graffiti to the laws I didn't even think I'd qualified to break, such as inciting mass hysteria and even terrorism. When they said I should be grateful for the warning and that they'd follow things up if charges are pressed, I was more than ready to drop on my knees and thank them. I was so caught up in the hysteria that I didn't chase up on what to do about the note, so I went to bed and hoped they didn't also think that was a part of the prank. After that, life went back to normal, minus the death stares from passers-by and being shunned by co-workers after the story broke. In a way, what I set out to do kind of worked, as people were now kicking themselves for falling for such dramatics. However, they were definitely releasing their anger of that on me. I was let go from my job as it was a PR nightmare to have me show face as an employee. so now I had a lot more time to myself. I ended up spending the rest of the week lounging around and listening to the news anchors break the story in basically all the stages of grief. At first, they were in denial that it was all a prank, and were trying to backpedal any wrongdoing. This soon turned to anger, mostly at me. They seemingly missed the last 3 steps, as the story soon died off before any semblance of acceptance. With the news fading from the public eye, I was starting to believe that I could get back to a normal life. But this glimmer of hope soon crumbled into a fallacy. Late on a Sunday, I very clearly saw a figure standing in my back garden. It was dark, but the motion light glared on while I was in my kitchen. Looking out my window, I saw him. He was alone, at first standing very still. I didn't blink, frozen in a mixture of confusion and fear. He slowly raised his right hand to his face, index finger raised, and put it to his lips. That's when I saw his face, or at least what was covering it. It looked like a very rough-looking sackcloth material, with a very wide and unnatural smile folded in. Dark stains lay faded where the eyes should have been. He stood like this for a few seconds, making sure I got a full picture of what he wanted me to see. And then the motion light went dead. With this, I burst out of my kitchen and to my phone. Shaking, I managed to dial out and call the police, and within minutes, they were here. At first, they were very attentive, taking notes on everything I was saying and consolidating me in my state of shock. However, when I finished my story, explaining that I thought it was the Sonny family cult, they soon furrowed their brows. After this, their demeanor changed due to an obvious fact. They realized who I was, and so they didn't believe me. It felt like after I implied there was a masked figure haunting me who mysteriously disappeared when the motion lights went out, which were working when they checked them, they acted like I was crying wolf and left. I was heartbroken and at a loss on what to do. If the police wouldn't help me, who would? A few days later, I got in my car to drive to the shops. There were no signs of a break-in, but when I opened the glove box to grab some change, I saw a heart. I hoped to God it was a pig's. Not long after, late one night, I heard some banging on my back door. I grabbed the nearest hard object and curled up in the corner, getting ready for what I believed to be my last stand. Nothing ever came. When I went out the next day, my back door was smeared with layers and layers of thick red handprints. I swear they were toying with me, like they knew no one would believe me. To them, this was fun. However, the threats feel more and more sinister. Sometimes I hear footsteps in my house at night. I see silhouettes outside my window for long periods of time. They're watching me, enjoying my pain. But now, I think they're getting bored of me. And judging from their reputation, I feel I know how they want it to end. The police are no help. The locals don't listen to me either. I'm hoping that you will. Please, you're my only hope. I need people to know. The Sonny family cult is real. This is a story inspired by Crypt TV, this time their series about the Sonny family cult. Season 1 and 2 are already out on their channel, which you can watch for free right now. Make sure to subscribe to catch Season 3 when that drops.